In 2007, a fishing vessel operating in the Ross Sea hauled up something that took the crew several minutes to process. It was a squid. Specifically, a colossal squid, Mesonicoteuthis hamiltoni, and it weighed 495 kilograms. That's about 100 pounds. Its eyes were the size of dinner plates, the largest eyes of any animal alive on Earth. Its tentacles were lined not just with suckers, but with rotating hooks. It had been feeding on Patagonian toothfish, which are themselves large, commercially valuable fish that grow to 6 feet long. The crew took photographs. Then they had to figure out what to do with something that big. That squid is now preserved in a tank at the Museum of New Zealand, Te Papa Tongarewa, and it remains the largest invertebrate specimen ever recorded. But here's what rarely gets mentioned alongside that fact. The colossal squid is not an anomaly. It is one of dozens of species that reach sizes in Antarctic waters that dwarf their relatives everywhere else in the ocean. Antarctic krill grow larger than krill elsewhere. Antarctic sea spiders, normally small, almost comically fragile animals, grow to the size of dinner plates. Antarctic isopods, pill-bug-like crustaceans that in warmer waters are roughly the size of a thumbnail, grow in Antarctic waters to 30 centimeters long. Whatever the Southern Ocean is doing, it is doing it to everything that lives there. The phenomenon has a name: polar gigantism, and understanding it requires starting with oxygen, specifically with how much of it is dissolved in cold water versus warm water. Cold water holds more dissolved oxygen than warm water. This is basic chemistry, the same reason a warm soda goes flat faster than a cold one. Gases escape from warmer liquids more readily. In the Southern Ocean, water temperatures hover between -2 and 4 degrees Celsius year-round. At those temperatures, the water is saturated with dissolved oxygen to a degree that tropical and temperate oceans simply cannot match. For most animals, oxygen availability is one of the primary constraints on body size. Larger bodies need more oxygen. In environments where oxygen is limited, larger bodies run into metabolic ceilings. They can't get enough oxygen to sustain the tissue they're carrying. This is part of why insects, which breathe through a passive diffusion system rather than lungs, are limited in size. Their oxygen delivery mechanism doesn't scale well past a certain point. In Antarctic waters, that ceiling is much higher. The water delivers oxygen so efficiently that animals can sustain larger bodies without running into the same metabolic wall they'd hit in warmer seas. The constraint is relaxed, and when a constraint is relaxed, evolution fills the space. But oxygen availability alone doesn't fully explain polar gigantism, because not every cold ocean produces the same effect. Arctic waters are cold, but Arctic gigantism is far less pronounced than Antarctic gigantism. The Southern Ocean has something additional going on. Part of it is isolation. The Southern Ocean is the most hydrodynamically isolated body of water on Earth. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current, the strongest ocean current in the world, moving roughly 165 million cubic meters of water per second, flows continuously around the Antarctic continent in a closed loop. It acts as a barrier. Species can't easily drift in from warmer waters to compete with or predate upon the animals that evolved here. The Southern Ocean has been biologically isolated for roughly 34 million years, since the Drake Passage opened and the circumpolar current established itself. 34 million years of isolation with high oxygen and extreme cold is enough time to produce body plan experiments that would get out-competed anywhere else. The colossal squid's rotating hooks, for instance, a hunting adaptation that would be metabolically expensive to produce and maintain, work in this environment because the prey items are large enough to justify the investment, and the competition is shaped by the same extreme conditions. The whole ecosystem scales up together. The Antarctic toothfish, which the colossal squid hunts, grows to over 2 meters and lives for up to 50 years. The Antarctic king crab, reintroduced recently to shallow Antarctic waters by warming temperatures, can have a leg span of over a meter. The Antarctic giant sea spider, Colossal, has legs spanning 30 centimeters despite having a body barely larger than a marble. Its legs are so disproportionate that it has no room in its body for a digestive system. Its gut runs down into the legs themselves. That last detail is worth sitting with for a moment. An animal whose legs are so long, relative to its body, that its organs had to relocate into the limbs to make room. That's what tens of millions of years of unchecked size pressure, in the absence of competing body plans, produces. The cold itself does something else beyond holding more oxygen. It slows metabolism. Cold-blooded animals, which includes most invertebrates, have metabolic rates that are directly tied to ambient temperature. In cold water, their biochemical processes run slower. Cells divide more slowly, growth happens more slowly. But crucially, cellular maintenance, the ongoing repair of proteins, membranes, and DNA, also becomes cheaper per unit time when the metabolic rate drops. The result is that Antarctic invertebrates tend to live much longer than their temperate relatives. Antarctic sea urchins live for more than 100 years. Some Antarctic clams have been aged at over 150. The slow metabolism that comes with extreme cold doesn't just allow larger bodies. It extends the time available to grow into those larger bodies. An animal that lives for 150 years and grows continuously throughout its life will, given enough food and oxygen, eventually become very large. This is the second engine of polar gigantism. Not just the removal of the oxygen ceiling, but the extension of the growth window. More oxygen to sustain large tissue, and more time to accumulate it. The colossal squid, though, complicates the picture in an interesting way. Because squids generally don't live long. Most squid species live 1 to 2 years. Fast metabolisms, fast growth, fast reproduction, fast death. The colossal squid appears to live somewhat longer, perhaps 3 to 4 years, but it's not a 150-year Antarctic clam. It gets enormous, not through slow accumulation, but through an extremely rapid growth rate sustained by the oxygen-rich Southern Ocean. Its eyes are a product of a different pressure entirely. At the depths where colossal squid operate, down to 2,000 meters, light is either absent or present only as the bioluminescence of other animals. Eyes the size of dinner plates, with pupils that can dilate to 9 centimeters across, are specialized for detecting the faint bioluminescent flashes of predators moving in the dark. Specifically, sperm whales. Sperm whales are the primary predator of colossal squid, and sperm whale skin carries bioluminescent organisms that produce faint flashes when the whale moves. The colossal squid's enormous eyes are not for seeing prey. They're for seeing the thing that hunts it. An early warning system, scaled up to the size of a dinner plate by millions of years of being hunted by the largest toothed predator on Earth. Every feature, in other words, has a reason. The hooks are for holding prey too large to grip with suckers. The eyes are for detecting predators in the dark. The size is for the thermal and chemical properties of the water it lives in. The Southern Ocean didn't make the colossal squid monstrous arbitrarily. It built exactly the animal that the conditions required, optimized for a set of constraints so extreme that nothing like it exists anywhere else. There's a version of this story that's about to change, and not in a good way. Antarctic water temperatures have been rising. Not dramatically, not yet. Fractions of a degree per decade. But in an ecosystem calibrated to function within a 2 or 3 degree window, fractions of a degree matter. Warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen. Warmer water increases metabolic rates in cold-blooded animals. The conditions that produce polar gigantism are, slowly, becoming less extreme. What happens to species built for those conditions when the conditions shift is not fully understood. Some research suggests that Antarctic invertebrates raised in slightly warmer water show decreased body size within a few generations. The oxygen availability drops, the metabolic cost of large tissue rises, and the evolutionary pressure that selected for gigantism relaxes or reverses. The Antarctic king crab provides a different kind of data point. King crabs historically couldn't survive in the coldest Antarctic shelf waters. The cold disrupted their magnesium regulation in ways that caused muscular paralysis. As shelf temperatures have crept upward, king crabs have begun colonizing habitat they were previously excluded from, preying on Antarctic invertebrates that evolved in a world without shell-crushing predators. The ecosystem didn't just lose some cold, it gained a predator it had no defenses against. The Southern Ocean is not static. It never was. The circumpolar current has been running for 34 million years, but the conditions within it have shifted before over-geological time. What's different now is the speed. Evolutionary adaptation to a changing environment requires generations. The rate of change currently underway in Antarctic waters is outpacing the timescale on which evolution operates, which means the animals that evolved under those conditions, including the largest invertebrate that has ever been recorded, may not have time to adapt. There's something uncomfortable about the colossal squid specifically. We have one specimen, one complete preserved animal. Everything else we know about colossal squids, their behavior, their hunting strategies, their social structure if they have one, how they mate, where their populations are, how many exist, we have inferred from beak fragments found in sperm whale stomachs, from sucker scars on sperm whale skin, and from the handful of partial specimens that have come up in fishing nets over the decades. The most we have ever seen a living colossal squid is a few seconds of footage, at depth, shot by a remotely operated vehicle that happened to encounter one. It appeared. It was filmed briefly. It left. We named it. We preserved one of them. We know it exists at the largest scale of any invertebrate life, and we know almost nothing else about it. The Southern Ocean is large enough and deep enough and cold enough that it keeps its animals out of reach. What it has shown us, the giant sea spiders, the ancient clams, the dinner plate eyes, the 100-pound squid with rotating hooks, is, in all likelihood, a fraction of what is actually down there. Which means that whatever rules we think we understand about how large animals can get, and how strange their bodies can become, are rules written from a very small sample. The Southern Ocean disagrees with most of them.